The chamber stretched beyond human comprehension. Ambassador Helena Cross had seen photographs of the Grand Canyon, stood beneath the dome of St. Peter's Basilica, watched rockets launch into the darkness of space. None of it prepared her for this. The Galactic Council Assembly Hall was carved into the heart of a dead star. Cooling plasma still flickered in veins along the walls, casting everything in shades of orange and gold. Thousands of seats rose in spiraling tiers, each occupied beings that defied description. Some were made of living crystal. Others floated without bodies, existing as clouds of conscious gas. A few looked almost human, which somehow made them more unsettling. Helena stood on a platform at the center of it all, a disk of polished metal no wider than a parking space. Beside her stood General Thomas Reed, his military uniform crisp despite 3 days without sleep. Behind them both, Dr. Amara Obi clutched a translation device, her dark eyes scanning the alien crowd with the focus of a scientist studying a new species, which, Helena reminded herself, was exactly what they were doing. The noise died suddenly. A being of pure white light descended from the highest tier, its form shifting and reforming like a living cloud. When it spoke, the words appeared directly in Helena's mind, bypassing her ears entirely. "You stand before the Galactic Council," the being announced. "I am First Voice Lumineth, appointed speaker for the 743 member species of this assembly. You represent the planet designated in our records as Sol 3. You call it Earth." Helena stepped forward. Her legs wanted to shake. She refused to let them. "I am Ambassador Helena Cross. I speak for the United Earth Government. We come in peace, seeking to understand why your people attacked our world." The chamber exploded with sound. Creatures shrieked in frequencies that made Helena's skull ache. Others pounded appendages against their seats or released clouds of colored gas that signified emotions she could not interpret. The chaos lasted nearly a minute before First Voice Lumineth restored order. "You speak of the Valorn Dominion's expeditionary force," Lumineth said. "They claim your species committed unprovoked genocide against their fleet. 40,000 soldiers, 300 vessels, destroyed without warning or mercy." General Reed's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. This was Helena's arena. "They attacked us first," she said simply. "We defended ourselves." A creature rose from the Valorn section of the assembly. It stood 12 feet tall, covered in overlapping plates of natural armor, the color of dried blood. 4 arms ended in claws, capable of shearing through steel. Its face, if it could be called that, was a cluster of sensory organs surrounding a circular mouth filled with rotating teeth. "Lies," the creature declared. "The humans are primitive, weak. They had barely achieved nuclear fission when we discovered them. Our fleet was on a standard resource assessment mission. They attacked without provocation." Helena felt something cold settle in her stomach. Not fear, something older. Something that had kept her ancestors alive on the African savanna, when everything with claws and teeth wanted to eat them. She smiled. "May I present evidence to the council?" First Voice Lumineth flickered with what might have been surprise. "Evidence is permitted. Proceed." Helena nodded to Dr. Obi, who activated the translation device. A holographic display burst to life above the platform, filling the chamber with images. 3 months ago, Helena began, a fleet of alien vessels entered our solar system. They broadcast this message. The recording played. The Valorn language was harsh, all clicks and grinding sounds, but the translation appeared in text below. "Primitive species of Sol 3, your world and its resources are now claimed by the Valorn Dominion. You will be processed for labor allocation. Resistance will result in sterilization of your population centers. You have 1 rotation to surrender." The chamber fell silent. "1 rotation," Helena continued. "That is what they gave us." 24. Ours to surrender our entire civilization or watch our cities burn. They did not ask for negotiation. They did not offer terms. They simply demanded that 7 billion people accept slavery or death. She let the words hang in the air. We chose neither. The holographic display shifted to show Earth from orbit. The Valorn fleet hung in formation above the planet, sleek vessels bristling with weapons beyond human understanding. What you are about to see, Helena said, is what happens when you threaten the children of Earth. The battle unfolded in accelerated time. First, the orbital satellites, thousands of them, simple communication and weather devices that humans had been launching for decades, suddenly revealed hidden payloads. Kinetic projectiles, nothing more than tungsten rods, launched toward the alien fleet at incredible speeds. The Valorn ships had shields. The shields stopped energy weapons, plasma bursts, even nuclear radiation. They were not designed to stop solid objects moving at a fraction of light speed. The first wave of rods punched through 3 cruisers before the Valorn even understood they were under attack. Impossible, the Valorn representative snarled. They had no weapons capable of threatening our vessels. We had weapons. General Reed spoke for the first time. We simply had not shown them to anyone, including ourselves. The hologram continued. Valorn fighters launched in swarms, descending toward Earth's surface to establish ground superiority. They entered the atmosphere expecting terrified civilians and primitive resistance. They found neither surface dash-to-dash air missiles, stockpiled during decades of human conflict, rose to meet them. Fighter jets scrambled from hidden bases on every continent. Ground forces that had spent centuries fighting each other suddenly remembered that they were all human first. The Valorn had conquered 17 species. Those species had surrendered after seeing the overwhelming force arrayed against them. They had calculated the odds and chosen survival through submission. Humans did not calculate odds. Humans fought. The hologram showed Valorn ground forces landing in the Siberian wilderness, expecting easy conquest. Instead, they found an environment more hostile than any alien world, and human soldiers who knew every frozen inch of it. The aliens had superior technology. The humans had superior knowledge of their own territory, and an absolute refusal to surrender. Within 72 hours, the Valorn Expeditionary Force had ceased to exist. Helena stopped the playback. The chamber was utterly silent. "We did not start this war," she said, "but we finished it. Now I have a question for this council." She looked directly at the Valorn representative. "Your people attacked a world without provocation. You threatened genocide against a species that had never harmed you. You gave us 24 hours to choose between slavery and death." Her voice hardened. "Under your own laws, what is the penalty for such actions?" First voice Lumineth flickered rapidly, processing. "Unprovoked aggression against a sentient species is a capital offense under council law. The penalty is dissolution of the aggressor state and distribution of its territories among the victims." The Valorn representative began to protest, but Helena spoke over him. "Then I formally request that this council apply its own laws. The Valorn attacked us. We defended ourselves. If anyone should be on trial here, it is them." The chamber erupted once more, but this time the tone was different. Species that had suffered under Valorn expansion saw an opportunity. Others simply enjoyed watching him. Supposed primitive turned the tables on one of the galaxy's most feared powers. Helena Cross stood at the center of the storm, waiting. Behind her, General Reed allowed himself a small smile. Humanity had come to the stars, and the stars would never be the same. First voice Lumineth raised a limb for silence. "The council will deliberate. The human delegation will remain as guests until judgment is rendered." As guards escorted them from the chamber, Dr. Obi leaned close to Helena. "Do you think they believed us?" Helena glanced back at the assembled species, at the Valorn representative. still sputtering with rage at the curious and fearful faces watching humanity's first representatives. "It does not matter if they believe us," she said quietly. "It matters that they fear what we might do if they do not." The doors closed behind them, sealing away the noise and chaos. But Helena knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy had noticed Earth, and Earth was not done surprising them. 3 days passed in the guest quarters of the Council Station. Helena Cross spent most of that time staring out the window at ships arriving from across the galaxy. Word had spread. A primitive species had destroyed a Valoran fleet. Everyone wanted to see the animals who had accomplished the impossible. General Reed paced the quarters like a caged wolf. He had been a soldier for 30 years, fought in deserts and jungles and frozen mountain ranges. Waiting had never been his strength. "They are taking too long," he said. "Something is wrong." Dr. Obi looked up from her tablet. She had been analyzing the translation device, learning everything she could about alien languages and communication methods. Knowledge, she believed, was the only weapon that never ran out of ammunition. "The Council has 700 species to consult," she said. "Democracy is slow everywhere. This is not democracy. This is politics." Reed stopped pacing. "The Valoran have allies. They are working to turn this against us." A chime sounded at the door. Helena straightened her jacket and nodded out the door, opened to reveal a creature unlike anything they had encountered. It appeared to be made of living shadow, a humanoid shape that absorbed light rather than reflected it. 2 points of silver light served as eyes. "Ambassador Cross," the creature said, its voice like wind through dead leaves. "I am Shade Counselor Veth of the Umbral Collective. I request a private audience." Helena glanced at her companions. Reed's hand moved toward where his sidearm would have been. Had the Council not confiscated their weapons? Dr. Obi simply watched with scientific interest. "You may enter," Helena said. Veth flowed into the room, moving without visible legs or feet. The temperature dropped several degrees in its presence. "I will be direct," Veth said. "The Council is deadlocked. The Valoran bloc demands your execution for war crimes. The neutral species want to study you like laboratory specimens. Only a handful support your claim of self-defense." Helena kept her face neutral. "And where does the Umbral Collective stand?" Those silver eyes flickered. "We stand where we have always stood, in the shadows, watching. But I came to give you information that may save your species." Reed stepped forward. "What kind of information?" "The Valoran are not waiting for the Council's decision. They have sent word to their homeworld. A second fleet is being assembled. This one will not make the mistake of underestimating you." Helena felt ice form in her chest. "How large?" 10 times the force you destroyed. Perhaps more. They will burn your world to ash and present your extinction as a fait accompli. The Council will protest, issue sanctions, perhaps even expel the Valoran from membership. But you will already be dead. The room fell silent. Dr. Obi's tablet slipped from her fingers and clattered on the floor. "Why are you telling us this?" Helena asked. Veth's form rippled, shadows flowing like water. "Because the Umbral Collective has long memories. 12,000 years ago, the Valoran did to us what they tried to do to you. We were not strong enough to resist. Our homeworld is now a Valoran mining colony. Our people serve as slaves in their war machine." The creature leaned closer, and Helena could feel cold radiating from its body like heat from a furnace in reverse. "We want revenge. And you, Ambassador, may be the weapon we have waited 12 millennia to find." Reed's military mind was already working. "How long until the fleet reaches Earth?" 14 standard cycles. In your measurement, approximately 23 days. "That is not enough time," Reed said. "We used everything we had to stop the first attack. Our weapons are depleted. Our defenses are in ruins. then you will need allies. Veth's silver eyes moved to each human in turn. The Valorn are feared, but they are not loved. Many species would celebrate their downfall. They simply lack the courage to act. Helena understood. You want us to unite them. I want you to show them what you showed the Valorn. That size and technology do not determine victory. That a species willing to fight, truly fight, can defeat any enemy. Dr. Obi picked up her tablet, her scientific mind processing the implications. The other species in the council, what are their capabilities? Their weaknesses? Veth made a sound that might have been approval. This one asks the right questions. I will provide what intelligence I can. But understand this, the council will not officially support you. Any alliance must be informal, deniable. Species who join you will be taking an enormous risk. So will we, Helena said. But we have no choice. She walked to the window and stared out at the endless stars. Somewhere out there, beyond the light of distant suns, her home was preparing to die. 7 billion people going about their lives, unaware that extinction was sailing toward them, unless she stopped it. General Reed, she said without turning around, I need you to return to Earth. Take Dr. Obi with you. Tell them what is coming and prepare whatever defenses remain. Reed's face hardened. I am not leaving you here alone. Someone needs to stay and build this alliance. Someone needs to go home and prepare our people. Helena finally turned, and her eyes held something that made even the shadow creature step back. I am the diplomat. This is my battlefield. Go fight on yours. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Reed nodded slowly. I will need a ship, and away past the Valorn patrols. Veth's form rippled with what might have been amusement. The Umbral Collective has certain talents in avoiding detection. We will ensure your safe passage. There is one more thing, Dr. Obi said. All eyes turned to her. The other species need to see that humans are worth fighting alongside. They need a demonstration. Helena raised an eyebrow. What kind of demonstration? Dr. Obi smiled, and there was something almost predatory in it. The Valorn believe they understand us. They think they know our capabilities, our limits, our psychology. They are wrong. She pulled up data on her tablet. I have been studying the Council's records. There is a tradition here, a ritual called the Trial of Worth. Any species seeking alliance can challenge another to a contest of their choosing. If they win, the challenged species must grant one request. Veth's silver eyes brightened. You cannot be serious. The Trial of Worth has not been invoked in centuries, and no primitive species has ever won. Then it is time to change that. Dr. Obi looked at Helena. Challenge the Valorn representative directly. Beat him in front of the entire council. Show everyone watching that humans are not prey. Reed shook his head. The Valorn are 12 feet tall and covered in natural armor. What contest could we possibly win? Helena stared at the tablet, then at the shadow creature, then out the window at the stars that held her home's fate. A contest they do not expect, she said slowly. A contest that plays to our strengths, not theirs. She began to smile, and it was not a pleasant expression. Counselor Veth, tell me everything you know about Valorn psychology. Their fears, their weaknesses, their pride. The shadow creature leaned forward, silver eyes gleaming. With pleasure, Ambassador. With absolute pleasure. Outside the window, ships continued to arrive from across the galaxy. Word was still spreading. A primitive species had challenged the natural order of things. And that primitive species was just getting started. The council chamber had never been so full. Species that had not attended a session in decades had sent representatives. Creatures that existed as pure thought projected their consciousness across light years to witness what was about to happen. Ambassador Helena Cross stood once again on the central platform. But this time she was not alone in her vulnerability. Across from her, the Valen representative towered like a nightmare given flesh. War Commander Threll had personally volunteered to face the human in the Trial of Worth. He had killed 37 opponents in ritual combat during his career. He expected to make it 30-8. First, Voice Lumineth descended from the upper tiers, its form blazing with curiosity. The human delegation has invoked the Trial of Worth, an ancient tradition not seen in 400 cycles. War Commander Threll of the Valorn Dominion has accepted the challenge. Ambassador Cross, state your terms. Helena kept her voice steady. The challenged party selects the nature of the contest. I await the War Commander's choice. Threll's rotating teeth ground against each other in what passed for a Valorn laugh. You are brave for something so fragile. I choose physical combat. First to yield or die. A murmur rippled through the assembly. Several species who had been considering support for humanity visibly retreated. Physical combat against the Valorn was suicide. Helena did not flinch. I accept. The murmur became a roar. First Voice Lumineth flickered rapidly, processing this unexpected development. Even Shade Counselor Veth, watching from the shadows of the upper gallery, seemed to lean forward with concern. The terms are set, Lumineth announced. The contest will take place immediately. Ambassador Cross, do you require weapons? Helena looked at the 12-foot killing machine across from her. She looked at its claws that could tear through starship hulls. She looked at its armor that had evolved to stop plasma fire. No, she said. I do not need weapons. Threll's sensory cluster pulsed with confusion. Then understanding. Then contempt. You choose to die quickly. I can respect that. The chamber's protective barriers activated, sealing the combat area. Medical drones hovered nearby, though everyone knew they would be useless. A Valorn killing strike did not leave anything to heal. Threll moved first. He was fast, impossibly fast for something so large. One moment he stood across the platform. The next he was in the air, all 4 arms extended, claws gleaming in the plasma light of the chamber walls. Helena did not run. She did not try to block. She simply was not there when he landed. Threll's claws sparked against the metal platform. His head swiveled, sensory organs searching for his target. She had moved perhaps 3 feet to the left, just enough to avoid the strike. Lucky, Threll growled. He attacked again, and again, and again. Each time, Helena moved just enough to avoid death. She did not counterattack. She did not try to hurt him. She simply refused to die. The minutes stretched on. 5, 10, 15. Threll's attacks grew wilder, more frustrated. He was not tired, not physically. Valorn could fight for days without rest. But something else was happening, something that the watching species slowly began to understand. Helena was learning him. Every attack taught her something new about how he moved, how he balanced where his blind spots were. She filed away each piece of information, building a mental model of her opponent that grew more accurate with every passing second. This was what humans did. This was what had made them the dominant species on a world full of creatures larger, stronger, and more dangerous than they were. They watched. They learned. They adapted. At the 20-minute mark, Helena spoke for the first time since the combat began. You are slowing down. Threll froze. It was true, and he knew it. Not from exhaustion, but from confusion. Nothing had ever survived this long against him. His fighting style was built on overwhelming force and quick kills. He had no experience with prolonged combat against prey that would not die. What are you? He demanded. Helena smiled. It was the smile of a predator. I am human. She moved. It was not a dramatic attack. There was no flash of hidden weapon or sudden display of superhuman strength. She simply stepped inside his reach during his next swing, placed her hands against his chest armor, and pushed. Thrall stumbled back. He did not fall, but he stumbled, and the entire chamber saw it. A Valen war commander, pushed backward by a creature half his size and a tenth his weight. The psychological damage was worse than any physical wound could have been. Thrall roared and charged, abandoning technique entirely. Helena was ready. She had been waiting for this moment since the fight began, waiting for his pride to override his training. She dropped to the ground and rolled between his legs as he passed over her. Before he could turn, she was on his back, arms wrapped around his neck, legs locked around his torso. Valern had natural armor everywhere except one place. The joints where their body segments connected were flexible, vulnerable. Helena had spent the entire fight looking for these gaps. Now she found one. Her arm slid into the space between his neck plates and his shoulder armor. She squeezed. Thrall thrashed wildly, trying to throw her off. His claws scrabbled at his own body, tearing furrows in his armor as he tried to reach her. But human arms were designed for gripping, for holding on, for refusing to let go. 1 minute passed. 2. Valern did not need to breathe the way humans did, but they still needed blood flow to their sensory organs. Helena was not choking him. She was cutting off circulation to his brain, equivalent. At the 3-minute mark. Thrall's movements began to slow. At 4 minutes. He fell to his knees. At 5 minutes. He collapsed entirely. Helena held on for another 30 seconds, just to be certain. Then she released her grip and stood over the unconscious form of the galaxy's most feared warrior species. The chamber was absolutely silent. First, voice Lumineth descended slowly, its form cycling through colors that had no human names. The trial of worth is concluded. Ambassador Helena Cross of Earth is victorious. The silence shattered into chaos. Species that had watched from the sidelines suddenly reconsidered their positions. The Valern delegation was in complete disarray, half of them trying to reach their fallen champion, while the other half argued about what this meant for their political standing. Helena ignored all of it. She walked to the edge of the platform and spoke directly to the assembly. I have won the trial of worth. Under your ancient traditions, the Valern must grant me one request. First voice Lumineth flickered. This is correct. What do you request, Ambassador? Helena had thought about this moment for 3 sleepless nights. The obvious choice was to demand the Valern fleet stand down, but she knew that would only delay the inevitable. Treaties could be broken. Promises could be forgotten. She needed something more permanent. I request that the Valern Dominion release all slave species currently held in bondage. Every world they have conquered. Every people they have subjugated. I want them freed. The chamber exploded once more. The Valern representative, now conscious but barely able to stand, began screaming protests. Other species who had suffered under Valern rule for millennia, stared at the human with something that might have been hope. Shade Counselor. Veth's silver eyes burned with an emotion too complex for human language. First voice Lumineth raised a limb for silence. This request exceeds normal parameters. The Valern Dominion may choose to forfeit their council membership rather than comply. Then they forfeit, Helena said, and they become outlaws in the eyes of every species here. They lose trading partners, safe harbors, access to council resources. She looked directly at the struggling Valern delegation. Or they can keep their empire and their seat on the council, and simply admit that one human, one small, fragile, primitive human, defeated their greatest warrior in front of the entire galaxy. The trap was elegant. If the Valern refused, they became pariahs. If they accepted, they lost their slave empire. Either way, Earth 1. War Commander Threll finally gained his feet. He looked at Helena with an expression that combined hatred, respect, and something that might have been fear. "You planned this," he said. "All of it." Helena met his gaze without flinching. "My people have a saying, Commander. It does not matter how big the wolf is. It matters how smart the sheep are." She smiled again, and once more. It was not a smile of prey. "We are very smart sheep." 16 days after the trial of Worth, General Thomas Reed stood in the command center beneath the Rocky Mountains and watched the end of the world approach. The holographic display showed the Valoran Armada in perfect detail, courtesy of intelligence provided by the Umbral Collective. 347 capital ships, over 2,000 support vessels, troop transports carrying enough soldiers to occupy every major city on Earth. Simultaneously, the Valoran had ignored the Council's ruling. They had forfeited their membership and declared humanity an existential threat that must be eliminated. Every other species in the galaxy was watching to see what would happen next. "Status report," Reed said. Colonel Diana Vasquez pulled up the defense grid on her console. "Orbital platforms are at 60% capacity. We salvaged what we could from the first battle, but most of our kinetic projectiles were expended. Missile silos are restocked, but limited. Ground forces are dug in at every strategic location. It will not be enough." "No, sir. It will not." Reed had known this from the moment Veth delivered the warning. Earth had won the first battle through surprise and desperation. The Valoran would not make the same mistakes twice. Their shields had been upgraded to handle kinetic impacts. Their tactics had been revised to account for human unpredictability. The math was simple. Earth was going to lose. But losing and surrendering were two very different things. Dr. Amara Obi entered the command center, her tablet clutched against her chest. She had returned with Reed on a shadow ship provided by the Umbral Collective, bringing with her months of intelligence gathered during her time at the Council Station. "I have news," she said. "Some of it is even good." Reed turned to face her. "I could use some good news. The Alliance is holding. 14 species have committed to providing support if we can hold the first wave. The Umbral Collective is moving their shadow fleet into position. The Crystal Harmonics are providing sensor data. Even some Morgovian dissidents are sending supplies. If we hold the first wave," Reed repeated, "that is a significant condition. Ambassador Cross is working on that part." She sent a message through back channels. Dr. Obi hesitated. "You are not going to like it. Tell me anyway." "She wants you to let them land." The command center went silent. Every officer, every technician, every analyst turned to stare at the small woman with the tablet. Reed's voice was dangerously calm. "She wants me to let an invasion force land on Earth. Part of it, yes. She says the Valoran need a victory to satisfy their pride. If we give them a target, something that looks important but is not critical, they will focus their attention there instead of spreading out." "And what target does she suggest?" Dr. Obi pulled up a map on the main display. A single point glowed red in the middle of an empty ocean. "We have been building something," she said, "in secret for the past 2 weeks. A decoy installation designed to look like our command center. Fake communications, fake energy signatures, even fake personnel." Colonel Vasquez leaned forward. "If they take the bait, they will commit significant forces to securing it. Forces that will not be hitting our actual defenses. And once they are committed," Dr. Obi continued, "our allies can strike their supply lines. Cut off from reinforcement, the landing force becomes isolated, trapped." Reed studied the map. It was insane. It was reckless. It was exactly the kind of plan that humans have used throughout their history to defeat larger, stronger enemies. "How long do we need to hold?" "Ambassador Cross says the Allied fleet will arrive in 72 hours. We need to survive 3 days. 3 days. 72 hours against the largest military force the galaxy had seen in centuries. The odds were astronomical, but humans had never been good at calculating odds. "Do it," Reed said. "Begin evacuation of non-essential personnel from the decoy site. I want it to look valuable enough to attack, but empty enough that we do not lose anyone we cannot afford to lose." The command center burst into activity. Orders flew through communication channels. Soldiers prepared for the battle of their lives. Civilians huddled in shelters, watching the skies and waiting for fire to fall. 8 hours later, the Valoran fleet entered Earth's solar system. They did not bother with ultimatums this time. No demands for surrender, no threats of enslavement. They came to kill, and they wanted everyone to know it. The first wave of strikes hit the orbital defenses. Plasma fire turned satellites into expanding clouds of debris. Kinetic barriers shattered under concentrated assault. Human pilots fought and died in craft that were centuries behind their opponents. But they fought. Every destroyed platform bought time. Every fallen pilot took at least one enemy with them. The Valoran advance slowed, not stopped, but slowed. And that was enough. The decoy installation's signals blazed like a beacon. Valoran commanders saw what they expected to see: a heavily defended command center, the heart of human resistance. They redirected their assault. Landing craft descended through the atmosphere, burning through human air defenses with contemptuous ease. Ground forces deployed around the fake installation, setting up siege lines and bombardment positions. They did not notice the small ships that slipped past them in the chaos. Umbral shadow vessels, invisible to Valoran sensors, carrying special operators from 6 different species. They did not notice the supply ships that failed to arrive, intercepted by crystal harmonic raiders, operating on the edge of the solar system. They did not notice that every hour they spent securing a worthless target was an hour they were not spending on actual strategic objectives. In the command center beneath the Rockies, General Reed watched the battlefield evolve. The cost was horrific. Thousands of human soldiers dead. Entire cities under bombardment. The sky itself seemed to burn, but the plan was working. The Valoran ground forces at the decoy site called for reinforcement. None came. They called for air support. It was tied up fighting human pilots who refused to die. They called for orbital strikes on the surrounding area. And then they learned why humans had chosen that particular spot for their decoy. The ocean around the installation was not empty. It was mined. Weapons that humans had developed for an entirely different purpose. Deep-sea nuclear charges designed to trigger volcanic activity in enemy territory, detonated in a carefully calculated sequence. The artificial island that held the decoy installation sank beneath the waves, taking 40,000 Valoran soldiers with it. It was not victory. The Valoran fleet still orbited Earth. Millions of enemy troops still held positions across the planet. The war was far from over, but for the first time, the Valoran command structure experienced something they had not felt in millennia. General Reed opened a channel to the surviving human forces worldwide. "This is Reed. The enemy has taken the bait. Our allies are coming. We need to hold for another 52 hours. He paused, looking at the faces of his officers, at the burning sky visible through distant cameras, at the world that refused to surrender. "I know what I am asking. I know the cost. But remember what we are fighting for. Remember who we are." His voice hardened into steel. "We are human. We do not give up. We do not give in. We survive." The channel closed. Around the world, soldiers tightened their grips on weapons that seemed primitive compared to alien technology. Pilots climbed into damaged craft for one more sortie. Civilians picked up whatever they could find and prepared to defend their homes. 52 hours. It seemed like forever. It seemed like no time at all. But humans had survived ice ages. They had survived plagues. They had survived their own capacity for destruction. They would survive this too, or they would die trying. The Allied fleet arrived at hour 40-9. Ambassador Helena Cross stood on the bridge of the Umbral flagship, watching as ships from 14 different species dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. Crystal harmonics vessels sang their arrival in frequencies that made space itself vibrate. Morgovian rebel cruisers, ancient but deadly, took flanking positions. Shadow ships materialized from nothing, their dark hulls absorbing the light of distant stars. And at the center of the formation, something no human had ever seen before. The Void Walkers had come. Their ships were not ships in any conventional sense. They were holes in reality, spaces where existence simply stopped. Nothing could survive contact with them. Nothing could escape their hunger. Shade Counselor Veth stood beside Helena, its silver eyes fixed on the battle unfolding around Earth. The Void Walkers have not fought in 10,000 years, Veth said. They emerged from their dimension only when they learned what the Valorn intended to do to your world. Helena did not take her eyes off the display. Why? What do they care about us? They do not care about you. They care about what you represent. Veth's form rippled with something that might have been reverence. Your species has done something none of us believed possible. You have united the galaxy's outcasts against a common enemy. Species that have hated each other for millennia are fighting side by side because one small, stubborn world refused to surrender. The Allied fleet engaged the Valorn forces. It was not a battle so much as a reckoning. Ships that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries found themselves outmaneuvered, outgunned, overwhelmed by enemies they had never expected to face together. The Void Walker vessels did not fire weapons. They simply existed, and anything that touched them ceased to exist. Valorn cruisers veered desperately to avoid the holes in space, breaking formation, creating openings that the other Allied ships exploited without mercy. On Earth's surface, the situation shifted just as dramatically. General Reed had held the line for 49 hours, losing ground but never breaking. Now, with the orbital bombardment ending, human forces began to push back. Valorn soldiers who had expected easy conquest found themselves facing enemies who knew every inch of the terrain, who fought with a fury that defied their primitive technology, who refused to accept defeat no matter how hopeless the situation seemed. The battle lasted another 11 hours. By the end, the Valorn fleet had been reduced to scattered remnants fleeing toward deep space. Their ground forces surrendered in waves, shocked that the species they had dismissed as primitive animals had not only survived, but won. Helena Cross returned to Earth 3 days later. The world she found was wounded but alive. Cities smoldered. Millions mourned their dead. The scars of invasion would take generations to heal, but the sky was clear. The enemy was gone, and humanity was no longer alone. General Reed met her at the landing site, his uniform stained and torn from nearly a week of continuous combat. He looked exhausted, but his eyes held something that Helena recognized. Pride. "Ambassador," he said, offering a salute that was more genuine than any he had given in his entire career. "Welcome home." Helena returned the salute, then extended her hand. Reed took it. "Is it true?" he asked. "What they are saying about the Council?" Helena nodded. "The Valorn have been expelled permanently. Their conquered territories are being liberated. 17 species that have been enslaved for millennia are free because of what we did here." Reed looked up at the sky, at the stars that had tried to kill them. "And what happens now?" "Now?" Helena smiled. "Now the interesting part begins. 1 year later, Earth's first interstellar embassy opened its doors. The building was constructed in Geneva, a collaboration between human architects and engineers from 8 different species. Its design incorporated elements from every culture that had fought in the Battle of Earth, a physical symbol of the alliance that had saved humanity. Dr. Amara Obi served as its first director. She spent her days negotiating trade agreements, cultural exchanges, and technology transfers with representatives from across the galaxy. Humans had much to learn, but they also had much to offer. Their psychology fascinated alien scholars. Their history horrified them. Their art inspired them. Their stubbornness drove them mad. But more than anything, their capacity for hope in the face of despair earned them respect. Shade Counselor Veth visited the embassy regularly. The Umbral Collective had emerged from the shadows for the first time in centuries, their ancient hatred of the Valorn finally satisfied. They found unexpected kinship with humans, 2 species who had survived against impossible odds. General Reed retired from military service and accepted a position try. Ning allied forces in human tactics. His students came from 100 worlds, but they all learned the same lesson. Victory was not about strength or technology. It was about will. And Ambassador Helena Cross continued her work. The galaxy was vast, filled with threats and wonders beyond human imagination. There were enemies still lurking in the darkness, species that saw humanity's rise as a threat to be eliminated, but there were also allies to be found, friends to be made, a future to be built. On the anniversary of the invasion, Helena stood before the Galactic Council once more. But this time, she did not stand alone on a small platform, facing judgment from beings who considered her species primitive. This time, she stood in the delegation section reserved for full members. Beside her sat representatives from every species that had fought in the Battle of Earth: the Umbral Collective, the Crystal Harmonics, the Void Walkers, even some former Valorn worlds that had chosen to join the Alliance rather than their former masters. First voice. Lumineth addressed the assembly. 1 cycle ago, this council faced a question. What do we do with a species that refuses to die? The being of living light turned to face the human delegation. Today, we have our answer. We learn from them. Helena rose to speak. The chamber fell silent, every species waiting to hear what the primitive world had to say. My people have a tradition, she began. When we face the darkness, we do not curse it. We light a fire. She gestured toward the holographic display, which now showed images from across the galaxy. Former slave worlds celebrating their freedom. Allied species working together for the first time in recorded history. Human children and alien children playing in the corridors of the Geneva embassy. You called us primitive. You were not wrong. Our technology is crude. Our lifespans are short. Our bodies are fragile. Her voice hardened, and every being in the chamber felt the weight of her words. But we have something that conquered species lose. We have hope. We have the belief that tomorrow can be better than today, that our children will inherit a universe worth living in. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of creatures that had ruled the stars for millennia. That is what we offer the galaxy. Not weapons, not technology, not conquest. She smiled, and it was the warmest expression any alien had ever seen on a human face. Just hope, and the stubborn refusal to ever give up. The applause began slowly, spreading through the chamber like wildfire. Species that had never agreed on anything united in their recognition of what humanity had accomplished. Helena Cross returned to her seat and looked out at the stars visible through the chamber's vast windows. Somewhere out there, on a small blue world orbiting an unremarkable yellow star, 7 billion humans were waking up to a new reality. They were not alone anymore. They would never be alone again, and the galaxy would never be the same. The story of Earth had just begun. But its first chapter was complete. A primitive species had been attacked without warning. They had fought back. They had survived. And now, against all odds, they were going to thrive. The stars watched, as they always had. But for the first time in galactic history, the stars were watching with respect. The humans had arrived.